Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Word is Bond podcast, which is hosted by the Bond Educational Group. Each Friday at 12 noon, we interview leaders in education and business about how equity shows up in their industry. So I'm Todd Mealy, the Director of Equity and Instruction for the Bond Educational Group, and I'll moderate today's discussion. But before I introduce our guests, I want to remind our viewers that our Equity Summit is quickly approaching. It's scheduled for February 8th to the 10th in 2022. The event is 100% virtual, so be sure to go online and purchase your ticket. You can go to www.theequitysummit.com. The theme at this year's conference is Rising Together, and we're even more excited about our speakers, the speaker lineup for this year. So we really want you to take a look at the information that we have online. So again, log on to www.theequitysummit.com. Okay, today we have two guests with us. They're both from Millersville University in Central Pennsylvania. The first guest that we have is Dr. Miriam Whitmer. Dr. Whitmer had attained her PhD in education from Temple. She came on board at Millersville just a few years ago as an assistant professor in the Education Foundations Department. She's also the co-founder of the Social Justice Collective, which is going to be the main point of conversation today. In addition to that, nonetheless, she is the co-editor of Connect magazine of the International Mentoring Association. So what the Connect does, it's published 3 times a year, and it aims to highlight best practices and research and publications in the field of mentoring and coaching. So Dr. Whitmer, we're excited to have you with us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting us.
Sure.
I really am excited about this opportunity.
Great. So also with us is Dr. Jennifer Burke. And Dr. Burke is originally from Somerville, New Jersey. She worked, prior to coming to Millersville, she worked 12 years as a special education teacher. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Early, Middle, and Exceptional Education at Millersville, where she arrived, I believe, in 2016. You might have to correct me on that. She recently came on board as the chairwoman of the President's Commission on the Status of Women. And as mentioned a moment ago, she works with Dr. Whitmer as the co-founder of Millersville's Social Justice Collective. So Dr. Burke, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Sure. So let's jump right into it now. And what I want to do is I want to ask both of you, Dr. Whitmer, we'll start with you. But can you tell us your background in the field of education? And I'd like to use this answers from both of you to frame our discussion today.
Absolutely. I was a K-12, well, actually a 7th through 12th grade English teacher for 16 years before I came to Millersville. And like you mentioned, I got my PhD at Temple University in Education with a focus on educational psychology. And I've been at Millersville actually this will be my 24th year, but for my the full-time job, this will be my 4th year coming up as a full-time educator. And I teach pre-service teachers, so it's my great honor to teach them because I really feel like we can touch the future by working with these phenomenal young people who want to be teachers. So
okay, great.
My background.
Okay, great. Dr. Burke, same question.
Sure. So as you shared, I was a teacher for 12 years in Somerville, New Jersey. And what I loved about Somerville, New Jersey is the amazing diverse population. I had so many families from all over the world. I had students from Algeria, Guatemala, Pakistan, Colombia, Costa Rica, just everywhere. And what was kind of almost sad, actually extremely sad, is that no one ever talked to me about what it meant to be a white teacher educating all of these diverse students from all over the world. It was never a professional development. It was never a thing that was gone over in my teacher prep program. And it was sort of something that I had to stumble into myself through my graduate work, particularly at Rutgers University, where I got my educational doctorate. And through that work, I realized, wow, there's so much I don't know, and I'm not being the best teacher I can be until I learn these things. And so that's really been my driving force for what I teach the pre-service teachers and also what I teach in-service teachers, because there are so many people who are like me, well-intentioned white educators who never had to think about the color of their skin or the power dynamics that are happening in their classrooms across the country. And so I kind of feel it's my call to make them realize what I had to realize.
Well, I mean, what you say, Dr. Burke, resonates with me. I went through my pre-service training in the late 90s. So 97 through I graduated undergrad with a teacher certificate in 2001. And I never had took a course in anything related to diversity or multicultural studies. But my mind was framed through a historical perspective because I specialized in the field of history, and my area of focus in history was on civil rights history. But nonetheless, even having that historical frame to draw upon, there are still some things I did as a young educator, that
make you cringe
are
in
things I'm
hindsight.
embarrassed about. Right, I'm ashamed of like things I might have said in class. Just understanding a power dynamic and my behavior influences the way that my students behave. So I think back of that 22-year-old first-year educator, that just did some silly things. Yeah, but who knows? It's like those that play sports. The coach runs them through practice so they can make mistakes that they won't make it in a game when it really counts. And that pre-service training is one of those, spaces, one of those settings where educators, future educators could vet those kinds of issues so they don't offend or abuse or microaggress students, right?
Yeah, I'd rather they ask the awkward questions in my classroom instead of saying it to an 8-year-old. I don't want to traumatize young students any more than living in this society already is upsetting to them. So definitely, I think Dr. Whitmer and I both want to make our classroom safe spaces to have those conversations at Millersville. And that sort of teases out why we created the Social Justice Collective, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So let me stay with you, Dr. Burke, and then Dr. Whitmer, I'm going to go to you with a follow-up. So you mentioned 8-year-old students, so you're focusing on young children, but I'm curious also with your background in education. What is there anything specific that got you to this point that encouraged you to create this social justice collective?
Yeah, so I think much like you with history, my emphasis was social studies. I was a special ed teacher, but as I went into all of the classrooms doing co-teaching and inclusion work, I realized how poorly social studies was being done. It was so, first of all, boring. It was so white male focused. It wasn't resonating with any of the students, let alone my special ed students. So I just knew it had to be done better. It just had to be more dynamic and engaging. So that's why I got my doctorate in social studies education specifically. And through that process, it really helped me look at history as a story of perspectives, which brought me into today, where we're still just a society of various people with various perspectives. And that's really fascinating for all kids. It's not like you have to wait till middle school or high school to hear stories about people and think about perspectives and see how interesting that is. So that's why I really like to make that very clear to all educators that this history and this understanding of others starts very young. Early childhood has this opportunity to think, oh, well, this is what I think, and my friend thinks differently. And so I think that's where we start building that idea of understanding and equity and inclusion.
Great. So I appreciate the response while enduring the dogs barking too. So we welcome them to the conversation. The history is stories of perspective. I love that, and we have viewers from throughout the United States and perhaps beyond. So I just want to take the opportunity just to remind them that we're recording the Word is Bond podcast right now. We want to remind everyone that's listening about the Equity Summit that is approaching in February of 2022, where you'll have the opportunity to hear from various perspectives, educators, and beyond the field of education that will talk about educational equity. So Dr. Whitmer, the Social Justice Collective, can you tell us what exactly that is and what inspired that?
Sure. First of all, I just want to really give a shout out to Dr. Jenny Burke, because we have been partnered in this from the very beginning. And really, I think both of us have had a passion for it. I mean, mine goes back to being the person of color as a multiracial person in my school district and being labeled that, and just wondering, like, where are all the teachers of color? So my work has been really a lot about trying to recruit and retain students of color to even consider teaching, which I think will have an impact on the equity in our profession. And then what really inspired Jenny and I to get connected is the murder of George Floyd. And we just both could not, we couldn't sit with that, right? That really inspired me. And then she and I talked, and I said, we have to do something, right? And education is one of those places where we can infuse this equity. We can really teach about social justice and really impact our overall community. So she and I got together and we talked about it, and we said, what can we do? And how can we maybe support our local educators? Because we were very frustrated at the time and very concerned about where our country was headed. And so we said, let's try this, right? So we have to give a shout out to all of our colleagues here at Millersville who stepped up. We just asked them. We know that we have lots of experts on campus. So we asked a few of our friends, and we both did presentations that first year. And actually, we're at our 1-year anniversary in August. So this is exciting for us to see that we could maintain this. And educators, we thought we would just support all of the local educators that wanted to come and learn a little bit more about social justice and get some support. And what we found was, Jenny could speak more to this because she does all the registration behind the scenes, but we have had people from Brazil and from Canada and from across the world come and kind of just check in, because they're all also feeling this, right? This injustice that's happening in our world. And so that's really what got us going. And we said, okay, if we build it, will you come? And they keep coming. So we keep building it. And now we're meeting like every other month. But I would also say, I want to do a shout out to a lot of the folks who stepped up in the collective to run groups. We have affinity groups for educators. I run an Educators of Color affinity group. Jenny's involved with the Advanced Social Justice, or the White Allies, right? And so we've had a number of those folks that we really respect and honor. And of course, you know, Millersville leadership has supported this project too. We've had Dr. Wuba as an opening speaker for our Social Justice Summit in the past, and Dr. Felicia Haywood Brown has also done that, and she's our CDO, or Chief Diversity Officer. So.
And Dr. Wuba is your university president.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just remember we have viewers from all over, so not everyone is familiar with Millersville. So just real quickly, Dr. Whitmer, just give us a bulleted list of, hey, I just heard of this social justice collective. Can you tell me what it is? So how would you give it to someone like myself, who might be uninformed, who wants to understand and know more what the collective is?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, we have sort of our mission is really to create a space for educators, you know, to share their lived experiences and to network with each other in an effort to support social justice for all people. And we envision a world where social justice curriculum is at all academic levels. And that's what's so nice about Jenny being in the early childhood realm, and I'm in the secondary realm. And then we have, of course, the higher ed capacity as well. So I think that that's what it's all about, right? Creating a safe space, having honest conversations about what's going on, and supporting one another, giving each other resources and supporting one another.
Yeah. Yeah, you said one or two things in your response early on. One was the lack of a diverse teacher workforce. Mm-hmm. Before we started recording here, Dr. Whitmer and I, and then Dr. Burke jumped on late, but we were talking about a summer seminar that co-teaching at Dickinson College in Central PA with rising high school seniors, focused on low-income students, first-generation students. And just yesterday, we asked the students how many of them had a teacher of color at all. And they're at this point 12 years of education, 12 years of formal schooling. And one hand went up of a dozen students. and it just reinforces the statistics that are out there, being 80% of the teacher workforce today is white. Schools that are overwhelmingly white, the educators there are almost 100% white. Schools that are majority students of color still have a majority of a white teaching force. And while that's not completely bad, there are problems that arise with that. Students feeling comfortable about asking questions and what they can say in class, having a connection, having an educator identify with a student and say, hey, you should think about becoming a teacher in the future. Something as simple as that can have an impact on the students. So it sounds like, Dr. Whitmer, that's one of the initiatives of the social justice.
I really think, that's been a passion of mine forever. I've developed project teacher development around that. So there's a social justice piece in all of that because of what you just said, but it is a separate sort of project. And that's exactly what I found when working with students. And even while students are here at Millersville and we lose some people in the pipeline, and I always want to do like an exit interview with them. Of course, I can't convince them, it's their decision what they want to do, but a lot of them are leaving the profession because it's not a welcoming environment for people of color, typically speaking, right? You have to be really purposeful about making your schools welcoming to students of color.
Yeah, I have taught in the high school level for 21 years now, and I've spent more than half of that time at a majority white rural school, high school, and in that time we've had educators of color come in and go. So I think you kind of speak to that retention problem that exists. Right? We could spend a lot of time on this, but I want to loop Dr. Burke back into the conversation. So Dr. Whitmer mentioned that your 1-year anniversary is coming up. We're recording this, near the end of the summer here in 2021, and you have a 1-year anniversary coming up on August the 5th, correct? It's the 5th, right? So how did the first year go? How much success did the collective have?
I think we're highly successful. We kept it going for a full year, and we're not doing this for a single cent. This is all because we're very passionate about this, both ourselves and our speakers. No one's being compensated. This is a labor of love, truly, and a gift to the profession as we see it. And we're just thankful that we were able to get people to come to all of the summits. As Dr. Whitmer shared, we've had people from all over the globe join us. And the summits are still going strong. We hope that everyone will continue to check us out. Shameless plug, if you go to our website, socialjustice4educators.com, you can find out about the next summit. So even if you're not able to join us in August, we'll have one in 2 months and we'll keep it going strong there. We're always looking for people to attend, to join, to learn, to grow. But also, if you have an expertise that you would like to share with us, we're always looking for presenters as well.
Okay, socialjustice4educators.com. You said the URL is. Okay. Dr. Burke, can you tell us, so largely the collective is you're providing webinars, teaching opportunities for educators. Are you looking at K through 12 teachers, higher ed teachers, or a combination of both?
All of the above. I think everyone has a piece to add to this story. For instance, we are going to have the welcome address be from one of our former students, turned award-winning teacher in Harrisburg, and she's a 2nd grade teacher. So she has a lot of experiences to share. And so she's going to be sharing with us at the summit. We also have longtime principals who are sharing from that systemic piece, what they've seen and what their schools have experienced and what they wish teachers would know. So it's really looking at the entire spectrum of education very broadly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then could you, Dr. Burke, can you list some of the programming that you facilitated, so the title, some of the topics that people presented on?
Sure. Well, we take it very seriously that social justice is a continuum, and we want to support you wherever you are in that continuum. So sometimes we have events called Antiracist Education 101, sort of defining terms. What is it? If you want to be an anti-racist educator, what is it exactly that you have to do? So that's sort of the foundational level. Dr. Whitmer is going to present about critical race theory, since that's become a big political buzzword these days. What exactly is it? Let's break it down. Let's look at the controversy. Let's figure out what's happening here. So these are the sessions that we present, and most of our sessions are interactive. These are all done through Zooms. So there's a lecture piece, but then there's also a question and answer piece, and there's some more engaging dynamics so that it's not just tune in and zone out. We really want to get our attendees to think and then apply what they're learning to their own practice as educators.
Excellent, good. So Dr. Whitmer, I'm actually going to ask this to both of you. We'll start with Dr. Whitmer. You know, oftentimes a program like what you're doing at the Collective kind of works both ways. So you're providing an education, knowledge to the people that are viewing your webinars, but then your presenters are also teaching you something. Your interactions with the viewers, the participant, is also informing you. So what have you learned over the course of the last year?
Well, you know, I think it's been really insightful that we've had some educators who also serve as parents. You know, that's their real full-time job, is being a parent. And to hear some of their stories, I mean, we also try to take the social justice in a broad term, right? It's not just about Black and brown people. It's about the LGBTQ community. You know, it's about students with disabilities. And we've been really listening a lot to how can we learn from their personal lived experiences and that of their children and affect change. So I think sometimes it informs us, right? So informs us enough to say, hey, we need to get somebody who's an expert on this topic for the next summit, you know, to really do that. And I think for me personally, it is, we're always growing and learning, right? I am learning every single day from everyone, and it helps me to become a better person and certainly a better educator of pre-service teachers, you know, to kind of change the tide here and make some real positive change in our education system, which of course we know has an impact on our society and our communities.
Great, thanks. So Dr. Burke, same question. What have you learned over the course of the last year?
So one of the things I've learned through this experience is, and I believe it's an African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's truly what I've learned about this collective, is we're going farther because we're including everyone. We're getting everyone's voices heard. We're listening to everyone. We're learning. Dr. Whitmer and I are big on feedback. We definitely want to make these sessions what the audience wants. And so we try to target specific topics that align with what we're being asked. So I think just that idea of collective, you know, we're strength in numbers. One educator is not going to make a huge difference, but if we all bond together, we can make some real changes occur.
So the both of you facilitate a summer program for educators and administrators. Is that, so there's two questions here. Is that part of the collective, or is it something separate? And Dr. Burke, you teach a course, a PD course called Antiracist Education, pre-K 6th grade. Dr. Whitmer, you're teaching Antiracist Education 7th through 12th grade. So can you explain what that program, what those courses are all about? Is it part of your social justice collective, or a separate entity? Dr. Whitmer, why don't we start with you?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that has been a baby, right? That's been something that Jenny and I got together, and our colleague, Dr. Sarah Jackson, and we said, you know, we can take this another step further and offer a summer institute and get some folks who really are invested in this or who are really struggling with this and give them an immersive experience in this anti-racism education and social justice. And so we just came off of that. So we're pretty high right now, right? 2 weeks ago, we had the week-long seminar, and we decided that there are differences with the early childhood folks and the secondary folks. So we wanted to break it down. And that's why I took that. My experience is secondary ed. So I took that level, and Sarah and Jenny took the early childhood folks. And I'll tell you, I was so incredibly, so I guess to answer your question, it came out of our work together to be able to connect and partner and say, yeah, we could take this another step further. But I think that I've learned so much from that experience, right? We've met these phenomenal teachers who are at all parts of the spectrum of social justice work, right? Some of them are going, white privilege, wait, what? And so others are been pretty advanced in their equity work. And so it was so great to have them all come together and to really process a lot of what's happening real time right now in our local school districts, in our area anyway, and I know across the nation, where they have to figure out how they can resolve some of these conflicts that are happening in our field of education, for sure. So it was awesome. It was awesome.
So Dr. Burke, I think, I think we have our answer about it was something separate from the social justice collective, and now they kind of work in unison, along the same path here. So can you tell us what your pre-K to 6 course looks like?
Sure. So it's very similar to Miriam's, but we really spent a lot of time unpacking what's going on in early childhood education. Why is this something that people feel they can't address? And a lot of it in early childhood stems from these ideas that children don't see race. They're these innocent little beings that just don't see race whatsoever. And research shows that that's just not accurate. Children can see colors, and children can see that people are different colors. And unfortunately, same race preferences are shown very early in children. Research has shown that children are able to start recognizing their own race very early. It's a biological necessity, people argue, of evolution. But not to go too far into research, really what we're looking at is the connection between children do see race, so what do we do about it? And so a lot of it is allowing students to question things and being open to those conversations when they occur. And so that took a lot of training for some of the teachers who don't have a lot of expertise in that. Particularly early childhood educators, they tend to gravitate towards books. They want a picture book for that. And thankfully, in the past few years, brilliant picture books have come out to address these issues. So the whole institute was building up towards a project. The students were allowed to select a project that they felt they could realistically implement in their school setting. So for my institute, several of the teachers did book collections that they wanted their school to purchase. They also did some professional development plans for their school because they realized that they alone won't make a huge change, but if they train their colleagues, that this could lead to bigger impact. So that was some of the end results were these projects, and we're really hoping that they're able to be implemented. I think Dr. Whitmer agrees with me. I think this year schools struggled with the pandemic. And that became such an overriding concern that a lot of the social justice stuff sort of got put by the wayside a little bit. And we're hoping that as the pandemic restrictions start to ease, that people will start to realize, okay, now we need to really address these equity issues. And we're seeing that in the schools, we're seeing that in the enrollments in the Antiracist institutes that we ran, and schools are starting to reach out to us, and we highly encourage that. We love working with schools. We want in-service teachers to get this information. So that's really, I think it's time. I think this is the time to make some change.
It sounds like your students and your institute are producing some very interesting projects. Do you do either of you post their work where other educators could take a look at that, get ideas, and even open up the conversation even more?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Todd, because one of our field trips, our virtual field trips, was to Nerd Camp, which is a wonderful program that is offered. And so we have colleagues that we've been working with to kind of set this up for our students to be able to attend virtually. And it's a number of illustrators and authors, and many of them are focused on social justice. And so one of the people who organized all of that, Debbie Myers, she found out about my students' work, that they wanted to promote a particular book, right? You have to present this book to your school board to get it approved. And so they did that was their project, doing this whole presentation to get ready and then get feedback from all of us. So they allowed me to share this with her because Debbie is very interested in, and a lot of teachers are finding that they have to really kind of be scholarly fighters to get some of the literature in and get rid of some of the old literature that's been around just forever, So yeah, we thought about that. And so we just had that one person request to see their presentation, and they gave me permission to do that. But that is a good idea to share maybe on our website or something, Jenny. Some of these projects, if they're willing
Look
to
at
share.
this. Good feedback, Todd. Thank you. We're learning as we go here today.
Yeah, there
so
we go.
Definitely. I think there's a lot of opportunities for sharing. Of course, if the students are willing to, because it is their individual work.
Right, right. Well, we're going to wrap up here in a moment, but Dr. Whitmer, your colleague here mentioned that in the next Social Justice Collective webinar, you're going to give a presentation on the mischaracterization of critical race theory.
Right.
So I'm not asking you to tell us what exactly you're going to talk about at this moment. I'm asking you, and Dr. Burke, you can reflect this, the response and the reaction across the country, where you see it taking place the most, and understanding, perhaps an understanding that the profound response or reaction to it at the college level, where the two of you are, is much different at the K through 12 level. Can you speak to that dynamic at all?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that where it's really reared its head is on social media, to be honest with you. So it's across the nation as far as I'm concerned, because there's been a lot of misinformation that's been pumped out into social media. And so it causes this divisive sort of idea about it. Now, we know critical race theory has been around for a long time, but all of a sudden it's lumped in with all of these other things, and equity has a bad name and diversity has a bad name. And
Culturally responsive teaching.
Culturally responsive teaching has a bad name. So, we don't believe that. So we want to make sure that we are teaching everyone, our pre-service teachers, our Millersville University students, and then the K-12 students, about how to be a critical thinker, because we're in this age where information is just so manipulated and we don't know what the facts are. So if we can at least teach them to be good critical thinkers, which is part of the critical race theory and part of culturally responsive teaching, then I think we're at least headed down the right path.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Burke, do you have any thoughts on this?
I have so many thoughts on this, but one of my students from the Antiracist Institute posted this in our new Facebook group that we created, and she shared the banning of teaching about systemic racism is actually the perfect example of systemic racism. And so I see this moment in history as a very deliberate pushback. Gains were being made and people couldn't handle it. And so I think that this is a time for us educators to band together and really stick to it. We can't fold to the pressure of a small minority who's saying that this isn't right. I think the larger body of people out there, once they're educated on what these things are, see that these are good things for children. And so banning them is really awful. And I think we have a lot of work ahead of us to educate parents and school boards and teachers to let them know how important it is to use culturally responsive pedagogy and to talk about issues of racism. Because if we don't, then this whole beautiful moment where we've been making some progress is going to be lost. And that's really scary.
Your words make me, it just reminded me that in a way there is a template that we can all look at this moment to kind of see where this is going to head. And that was in the Tucson Unified School District in Arizona from 2006 to 2017, a battle over ethnic studies. They had an ethnic studies department, which touched on African American studies, Latinx, Mexican American studies. It was called at the time Native American studies, but it was the Mexican American Studies program, or La Raza studies, with the largest student demographic population in the Tucson Unified School District, that was under attack. And that legal campaign played out over the course of 11 years. And I tell you what, the teachers and the students, they ended up winning in a federal district court case in 2017. But it wasn't the argument from the teachers, over First Amendment that won out, at the end of the day there. It was the argument by the students in a violation of the 14th Amendment. So I don't know, Dr. Whitmer, maybe that's something you can look into as you prep for your presentations, and Dr. Burke, as you continue to dialogue with people about the topic. But certainly what you just mentioned made me think about what happened what happened throughout the state of Arizona many years ago. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone has a reaction to that. There wasn't a question. That came to mind. So
no, I appreciate that so much, because I do think, even at the university level, I always talk about students have the greatest voice and they're the greatest, group, the largest number. on campus, and we're here for the students. So that's why we need to listen to everybody. So thank you for sharing that. I will check it out, the details of
Yeah,
that.
sure. And I do understand that there is perhaps a little bit more legal flexibility at the university level, which puts a little bit more pressure on, public K through 12 teachers and administrators that are there to support the teachers, correct? So there's so many different dynamic pieces that should be explored in this debate. So, okay, as we conclude here, Dr. Whitmer, is there anything about the Social Justice Collective we didn't bring up that you just want to put out there for the public to know?
I think just we welcome everyone to come. If you have an issue, if you have an attitude for this and you want to make sure that you are doing the best that you can, I have hashtag I pledge to be better. Like I just am constantly trying to grow every day. So if you're one of those people, we welcome you, socialjusticeforeducators.com. Check it out and come to our affinity groups. We can get you connected with other leaders who are doing this work too. And like Jenny said, and I heard Dr. Bettina Love say, she was one of our speakers at the summit at the Summer Institute. We're more powerful in numbers. So we need to just keep gathering our people together and learning from each other and supporting each other.
Great. And Dr. Burke, you mentioned a Facebook group. Do you want to give us the name of that and then share your thoughts on anything else about the collective that we should know?
Sure. So full disclosure, the Facebook group was the closed group for the individuals who did the Social Justice Summit, but we do have our Social Justice for Educators at Millersville is a Facebook group as well. So you can find that, and that is open to new members all the time.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank Drs. Whitmer and Burke for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I think the Social Justice Collective perhaps can serve as a template for educators out there, but then also to become part of your collective as well. So thank you all. Yeah, so I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for having us. This was really fun and enlightening.
Great. Thank you all for tuning in today. As a reminder, the Equity Summit will be virtual and it's held February 8th to the 10th of 2022. You can log on to www.theequitysummit.com, theequitysummit.com, and purchase tickets today. You can do that. So, okay, thank you, Drs. Whitmer and Burke, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. Thank you all.
Yep, you bet. Thank you.